Let's see, docs. There. And start.
Hello, my name is Maggie Block.
And I'm Enzo Staten.
And these are our official votes for the Elsies. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about why this was important to me. I'm a former theater kid. Not only was I in all of the productions in high school, but I went to college for theater, like a real winner. And for me, the Oscars were always like the Super Bowl. Like, I watch all year. I'm rooting for some people really hard. And it's just so exciting to see who wins and who loses. But I think, like a lot of people who love film, it can be really disappointing to come to the end of the year and come to the nomination season and see so many incredible and beautiful storytellers, stories, and actors just be completely ignored. I think some of us might have felt a little bit of hope after Moonlight won Best Picture. The best movie actually won Best Picture. And then in the past 2 years to see us kind of slide back into what the Academy sees as normal was a pretty huge bummer. So I was really excited when Elsie Fisher, the incredible lead actress from 8th grade, who's been in like Castle Rock since then, been doing lots of voice work, came up with her own nominations for her own award, the Elsies. We were both excited about them and both wanted to participate. So these are our official votes for the Elsies. The first category that Elsie announced was nominees for Best Costume Design. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to talk about if there is an applicable Oscar category. We'll talk about those first in case we want to complain. And then we will go on to talk about the actual Elsies and cast our votes. So, for Oscar nominees, the costume design nominations went to The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit, Joker, Little Women, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I have no huge complaints at this point. Especially because the one that I would complain about the most is also on Elsie's list. So, unless you have some hardcore thoughts.
No, I mean, for me, costumes don't jump out at me as much as anything else does. So unfortunately, it's not a category that I pay too much attention to. Though I think that we have watched we've watched 3 of the 5 movies that are on the Oscar list. So Joker, Jojo Rabbit, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood all looked fine enough. I didn't have any major complaints about them. So not too many thoughts on this category.
Okay. So I'm going to complain about so in the Elsie list, it's Hustlers, Rocketman, Little Women, Jojo Rabbit, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. So there's quite a bit of overlap between those two. My issue with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is A, that I didn't like the movie, but we'll talk about that more later. But B, my thought is I could go to a vintage clothes store and put together the costumes for that movie. And I know that I'm being way oversimplistic, and the people who actually make these costumes and, like, do the historical research to figure out what exactly people were wearing in that exact year, it's so much more complicated than that. But also, I think if you're gonna be giving out awards, nothing this year I found to be as epic as something like Black Panther, where we were really transported to a new world, and there was glamour and there was accuracy, and it really pulled you into this fictitious world. I think the closest we got in terms of glamour, and maybe that's just how I am as a movie watcher and someone who likes this award, is I want to see something glamorous, is Rocketman. So my vote might go there. But also something that I would have added to this list, since, Elsie got to make her own nomination categories, and we didn't get to vote in on that. I would say that Queen and Slim would be.
Queen and Slim was wonderful. Beautiful costumes. Yeah, just looked great.
Yeah, I mean, I think the costumes did incredible character development. Like, if you look at Queen at the different stages of where she was at emotionally throughout the movie, she was wearing completely different clothes. I think every different place that they went in this movie took you to a different part of America, particularly like the American South, and you really saw that in the clothing that they wore. So I would say my official vote, even I think Rocket Man is a close second, but for me it would be Queen and Slim should win the Elsie for costume design.
I would definitely agree with that. Queen and Slim would take it for me as well.
Yay!
And then we have the next category in the Elsies is Best Hair and Makeup. So for the Oscars, there was Bombshell, Joker, Judy, Maleficent, and 1917. As far as the Elsies go, there's Joker, Us, Rocket Man, and Bombshell. And I think the big thing about Bombshell is that Charlize Theron looks identical to Megyn Kelly. I think my first thought was, oh man, they got Megyn Kelly to star as herself in this movie. That's so strange.
No, totally. I think especially because there's those clips with other Fox anchors in. I was like, I guess her career path has taken a big nosedive. So yeah, I agree for Megyn Kelly, face matching alone. It's a good contender. There's nothing that was so epic I couldn't ignore it this year. Which isn't to say that these people didn't do incredible jobs. It's just I didn't notice it, which maybe is a sign of how well they did.
Yeah.
One question I have is so we have 1917 on this list for hair and makeup, and we have Jojo Rabbit for costumes. And for me, I'm like, in terms of costumes and makeup, I feel like they're the same movie.
Yeah.
In terms of everything else, no. But in terms of costumes and makeup, so it's just, I would love to know what people's logic was of one getting makeup and one getting costumes, because for the most part, 1917 and Jojo Rabbit was a lot of fatigues.
Yeah, definitely.
Some townsfolk, but a lot of fatigues. So I would say, I'll vote for Bombshell for my Elsie vote.
Definitely. Either Bombshell or Rocket Man. I actually, for Rocket Man in both of the categories for costume design and hair and makeup, if you're going to be Elton John, then you're doing pretty well as far as makeup and hair goes.
Yeah, can't argue with that. Okay, so the next category for the Elsies is Best Independent Feature, and there is no Oscar equivalent. So Elsie's nominations for this are Booksmart, Honey Boy, The Art of Self-Defense, and The Lighthouse. We watch a lot of indies, so I thought we could start by talking about what we would add to that list. For me, it's The Last Black Man in San Francisco. I think that you and I had different opinions about that movie.
Yes, we definitely did.
I thought it was utterly beautiful. It was beautiful to look at. It was beautiful acting. It told the story of America that's happening right now. And I wanted to cry more than once because it was so beautiful.
Yeah, and I just found it mainly pretty boring. I kind of I get it. I do. It's not a movie for me. I'm really a genre person. And this movie, if you would describe a movie as a character study, that's probably not a movie that I'm going to enjoy. But I do get the appeal of the movie.
So I guess I will say, Elsie, I would have wanted to have nominated The Last Black Man of San Francisco. We've discussed this one a little bit, but we did not see The Lighthouse or Honey Boy, but I would love to discuss I think the other two nominations are incredible movies from this year. I will start with Booksmart.
Yeah.
While I don't necessarily think that it is the greatest movie that came out this year, we'll talk about that more later. I thought it was amazing. Every single thing about it, from every single performance to the way it was shot, to the jokes, to the pace, to just the fact that like it was just a complete like gut buster comedy that like didn't pull any punches, but also didn't make me cringe and didn't make me feel gross and didn't like throw in a transphobic joke or a misogynist joke or a rape joke just to like, jolt me out of being able to have fun with this fun, funny, like full-throated comedy. And that honestly meant a lot to me, having this, incredible, like, ovaries to the wall comedy that was fronted by two young female actresses it was just so much fun. Like, I had a great time at the movies with you when we went to go watch that movie. And I was like, I'm not gonna think of the right word, but like evangelical about it. Like, I was like texting people about it. It was in my story. Like, we went to go watch it a second time, and I literally was like putting it in my story, like putting in some of my favorite quotes, being like, I just need people to watch it because it was so good. And just one of my faves.
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate that Oscars tend to really heavily favor the dramas, and it's unfortunate because there are movies that are really, really funny and are really progressive, aren't as popular with the Oscars, and it's unfortunate because there are movies that are really good that should get awards, but don't fit in that bubble. Booksmart is one of those. I don't think that it got any award nominations, at least as far as the Oscars go, and that's unfortunate. At least a screenplay nomination. I really do think that a lot more genre movies should be up for screenplay, especially because I know that they're not going to get the consideration of Best Picture. Get Out being one of them. Get Out, horror movie, excellent. Everybody agrees that movie is excellent. Was able to win the best screenplay that year. Even though we all knew that it wasn't going to get Best Picture, but I believe it was up for that. But yeah, Booksmart, just an excellent film.
Yeah. And so the other one that we saw was The Art of Self-Defense.
And I think that was that was probably my favorite movie of this year. And I just another movie that is just drop dead hilarious. A true black comedy through and through. I thought it really went in on the subject of toxic masculinity, and I thought the way that they kind of brought about that examination was in, to use a theater word, Brechtian. I thought that it really took it was very much telling you that it was a movie, really alienating you from what was going on just by a lot of the formalistic aspects of it. And I think that having that distance from the movie allowed you to really kind of look at what all the visuals were doing for the narrative. And I just thought it was wonderful.
He learned Brechtian from me, folks, and I've never been not so proud of him, but been like, oh my gosh, I was able to take my theater nerdery and pass it on to someone else. So, sorry, I will get back to it. But no, I thought that The Art of Self-Defense was perfect. And, along the same lines of it being Brechtian, like, everything about the world is just a little bit off kilter. And it makes it hilarious. And it allows you, because everything is so heightened and so strange, you really are able to buy in and watch these things that are just slightly off kilter of things that I honestly could really imagine happen in a hyper masculine space. And yeah, being able to watch something that was really funny and also challenging the patriarchy, I think was a pleasure. And so yeah, so I would say if you haven't seen Booksmart and you haven't seen The Art of Self-Defense, please check those movies out. Take a look at streaming. Of course, they will have them at the King County Library System and the Seattle Public Library System too.
If you're flying anytime soon, I believe
yeah.
The Art of Self-Defense is also on a lot of flights, so maybe watch that.
And Booksmart too, and they added the queer stuff back in because they took it out, but Olivia Wilde complained about it, so the queer scenes are back in. For my vote, even though I love both the movies we saw, and I know that I wanted to add The Last Black Man in San Francisco, and I do think that is a beautiful film, but for me, the indie movie that I loved the most this year was Booksmart. So that's my vote for the Elsie.
And for me, my favorite movie of the year, like I said, Art of Self-Defense. And if you have seen The Art of Self-Defense and you are interested in more films that kind of explore toxic masculinity, I would actually suggest watching Colossal and Hello Destroyer. Hello Destroyer is a very, very independent film. You'll watch it and you'll say, oh yes, this is an independent film. But I think that at time of recording, it's available on Amazon Prime. Wonderful film from Canada. And Colossal, at time of filming, available on Hulu. Also wonderful. It stars Anne Hathaway and was kind of a flop when it hit theaters a couple years ago, but just 100% worth the investment in that.
Yeah, so it's not up. It wasn't from this year, and we are not putting it up for Elsie. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I completely agree. It's a movie they had no idea how to market, and it starts off, and you're like, wow, this is a weird movie, and then it just keeps getting weirder. So I think they had no idea how to market it. So yeah, please check out both of those movies. Thanks for bringing those up.
And the next category in the Elsies is Best Horror Feature. So the nominees for this one are Ready or Not, Us, Climax, and Midsummer.
So going back to what you were saying before of respecting and loving genre movies, I loved that Elsie created a horror category, because that means that things like Get Out and, Us, Ready or Not, would actually have a space to be looked at and honored and critiqued and talked through. And to your point of what you were saying earlier of like wishing that comedies could be taken more seriously, I wonder why there's not a comedy category for the Elsies. Just throwing it out there.
Definitely. And I think one of I'm a big horror fan. Not so much all horror, but I really do like horror movies that have either the classics. I really grew up watching a lot of the classic horror movies, and I also like movies that use the genre in very interesting ways. And I also think that horror is one of the best ways to just explore society's anxieties. So again, Get Out, exploring this societal anxiety of race. Ready or Not, exploring the class. Midsummer, exploring shitty boyfriends, essentially. And so I'm very happy whenever we can talk about horror movies as explorations of our psyches, of anxieties, of our society. And so, yeah, I'm always happy to talk about horror features.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really watch horror movies ever, and I still refuse to watch a couple. Apparently, Hereditary is one of the greatest movies that's ever been made, and it just looks like it's going to make me sick. So I haven't watched it, but because of my relationship with you, Enzo, I actually have been watching more horror movies, and I think it's a really exciting time to be watching horror movies, because there's a lot of people that that are total film nerds and understand and speak the language of good filmmaking, but love genre movies. So throughout a relationship, we have seen things like It Follows and The Witch, And none of those movies have any of the things that I hate, which are like jump scares and unnecessary gore and, you know, murdering sexually free women. Um, yeah, no, I'm going to stick with that. Even with It Follows, we get at me. We can talk about that later. So yeah, so I'm excited to be able to watch horror movies now, and I would say that if you are a person who's a little bit uneasy with horror movies, for the three that we saw, we've seen Ready or Not, Us, and Midsummer. They were all really interesting, and I think they're worth checking out. So let's talk really briefly about Ready or Not.
Definitely. I actually really liked Ready or Not. I think that with hindsight being 2020, looking at Ready or Not as being a precursor of Knives Out, I think is a very interesting look at that. Both of those films explore a not exactly wealthy woman being, you know, coming into this family who's massively rich, and that family kind of turning against that person. And I think that Ready or Not was wonderful in exploring how self-serving rich people are, how clueless they are, and just how willing they are to sacrifice others for their own well-being. And I loved the ending of Ready or Not. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I really liked it because it was a horror movie that was really willing to have fun. Like, it was definitely a bit of a comedy horror movie. There's a little bit more gross stuff in Ready or Not than most horror movies that I like. There's a bit of gore. But, you know, like a lot of the gore was played for laughs, and that makes it slightly more palpable to me. And ultimately, it's very much like a story of a final girl. Like, to give away the beginning of the premise, there is a girl who marries into this family who they made their fortune as a game company, you know, like Fisher Price-esque. And a weird tradition that they have is every night that a new person marries into their family, that person selects this card from this big deck. And if it's hide and go seek, then if that person gets found, they have to get murdered. And it's a deal that was made with the devil by one of their ancestors. Or at least they think it was a deal that was made by the devil. And so it's about her trying to survive and her figuring out who she can rely on in this family. And just to throw it out there, like the amount of work they had to do, because she's wearing a wedding dress throughout the entire movie, and the amount of work that the costume designer had to go in to tell the story of this young woman through her dress. I think that this movie could be considered for best costume design for that dress alone. Or I watched a video about it, like there's like 27 different versions of the exact same dress in different levels of like blood and ripped up.
I think that to go on to Us, I think that it is unfortunate that Us came out in March, and it is continually unfortunate that Jordan Peele's movies are released at the beginning of the year because they are fantastic, and by the time that the awards come around, he's kind of out of memory by then. And so I loved Us. It was probably my favorite horror movie this year, though maybe we can discuss if another thing fits within under horror. But yeah, Us looking at the other and having a permanent underclass and just the anxieties of the underclass, especially as we come into this era, I thought were just beautiful. And cinematography, everything about that movie was great. I loved Us.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's another great example of horror storytelling that is willing to embrace comedy, and I think that made it so much more enjoyable. Of like, you have these very tense, horrifying, disgusting moments, and then those moments are broken with your ability to laugh, and being able to go through that with an audience was really, really fun and very captivating. There were incredible performances. I think that the world that he built and the way that that world looked were iconic. Like before I went to go watch that movie, I had actually bought 2 pairs of golden crafting scissors, and then like when I got them, I was kind of creeped out, and I was like, I don't know if I want anyone to see me holding these golden scissors. And yeah, I agree. I think that Us was. I think that Get Out, to speak to the points that you've made about it a couple of times, I think that it was a masterpiece, and I think that Jordan Peele forced us to take genre movies more seriously because it was that important of a movie, and it was really like a cultural moment. Get Out was, and Us, I don't, he didn't have 10 years to work on it the way that he did with Get Out, but it was fun, it was funny, it was scary, it made you think, and it was a beautifully produced world. So I liked it a lot. Midsummer is the other movie that we watched. I don't know what Climax was about. Probably was good. But Midsummer, to just do a quick abbreviation of that one, there's a girl who is trying to find where she belongs, and she's dating this guy, and she can feel like he's being kind of distant, and we are able to see some things behind the scenes that, like, yeah, he definitely doesn't like her anymore. And then tragedy happens for her, and she kind of accidentally gets invited to this trip with him and some of his other friends from graduate school to go to a Swedish midsummer festival. And it's a incredibly bizarre movie. These things keep happening that don't make any sense, but they just keep going. What I really liked about, I think this is another one where like the world was just so particular, like everything from the bedding to the artwork on the walls to the clothes that everyone was wearing. Like you really felt like you were out of this country, and you felt like you were in an entirely different place. And I think that there was something kind of exciting for me about there being this horrible horror story that's happening in pretty much, like the longest days of the year in what, Nordic countries? No,
I think a Nordic country.
In
Sweden?
the Nordic country, where everything is bright and everything is like in like baby blues and pinks, and it's all these like very sweet seeming like crafty white people that are doing all of these things. I thought putting horror in that world, like not just culturally but also in terms of like the lighting, was just so interesting, and I just never saw anything coming.
Yeah, I thought that the choice to make everything very much out in the open and most of the movie be in the very bright sun was a very good choice for a horror movie, and very different than a lot of other things which want to conceal. So this movie was just very much about bringing things into the light. I also liked that fairly. Well, from the ads, I was kind of questionable as to whether or not I was supposed to hate the boyfriend or not, because it's very clear that the boyfriend is awful, but it also seems that he is the main character of the movie. So it was very nice to kind of watch a movie in which a shitty boyfriend is in fact a shitty boyfriend. And by the end of the movie, she has at least rid herself of him. Now, if she's in a better place, we can discuss that. But
yeah, that's debatable. Debatable.
One thing that I'm interested in is that personally, I would think that Parasite is actually a horror movie, and I would be willing to even put it on the list as a horror movie or as best horror feature. Parasite was actually one of my favorite movies of the year as well. And so I wonder, so I think that everybody can agree that Parasite is maybe a thriller, but maybe a question, is it a horror film or not? And I think that another movie like Uncut Gems, which is obviously a thriller, would not be on the horror list. But I think that Parasite has some interesting fairy tale aspects and heightened aspects of it, so that it's not telling a supernatural horror story, but it's actually telling a horror story where the rich are the monsters, and the poor are either trying to escape, hide from, or kill the monsters. So I would be happy to see Parasite on any end of year horror lists. But from this list itself, I would probably choose Us.
Yeah, sorry, I'm literally thinking Us or Midsummer, and I think I love them both, but I think I would go for Us too.
Awesome.
Okay, so the next category is Best Original Score, and the Oscars list for nominations are Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, 1917, and Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker. I don't have any, I don't have huge complaints, but I can't say that I could sing you a song or like hum along the tune of anything from this list.
Yeah.
And then, so let's perhaps move on to the Elsie nominations, which are Uncut Gems, Marriage Story, Parasite, and The Last Black Man in San Francisco. Obviously, I'm thrilled that we can talk about The Last Black Man of San Francisco again. And I absolutely remember the score from The Last Black Man in San Francisco. It was beautiful. It really captured the spirit of the movie and the tragedy and the heartbreak of the main character and of the many people that he represents, and loving a city that doesn't love him back. And honestly, like, the last scene is very beautiful and very heartbreaking, and it's the repeat of the music that you've heard over and over again that at times have had these tones of hopefulness, but at the end you really feel this level, that hope is gone. I was crying as we were walking out of the theater because I thought it was so beautiful, and then Enzo didn't think it was that good of a movie, and that was difficult too. But so I will say, we haven't seen Marriage Story yet.
No.
But for me, the original score that stayed with me the most was The Last Black Man in San Francisco. But also, I wanted to add really quickly, a nominee that should also exist is Queen and Slim.
Yes. So Queen and Slim's original soundtrack was done by Devon Hines, who is better known as Blood Orange, both as a solo artist. Both as a solo artist and as a producer, produced an EP for Solange, but also, like I said, did this soundtrack. And the soundtrack for Queen and Slim was just excellent. Really propelled the story along, also allowed us to kind of linger in these lives of the people that they whose lives they entered into and changed in different ways. And so I thought that the Queen and Slim soundtrack was excellent. Additionally, a movie that I saw that you didn't see was Uncut Gems. So I know that you can't speak to the soundtrack, but that movie was a panic attack. Was just a panic attack from beginning to end.
Which is why I did not want to watch it.
Absolutely terrifying, and so the score just heightened that. Everything about that movie just heightened how terrifying it would be to be in that guy's life. The movie was so terrifying that I actually had to, in the theater, look up the ending of the 2012 Sixers Celtics series for the playoffs, Eastern Conference playoffs, and just so that I could know who won and at least relieve some of the tension from the movie. But Uncut Gems, fantastic. Adam Sandler, we'll talk about him in a little bit, but the soundtrack as well, just excellent.
I think you also wanted to talk about Parasite.
Oh, Parasite's soundtrack very similar to Uncut Gems, really heightens every moment of the situation. I thought I've seen that movie twice at this point, and I find it fantastic. Everything about it. But like I said, the same thing for Uncut Gems. The soundtrack for Parasite really heightens all of the emotions throughout the movie.
Okay, so I already said my vote would be for The Last Black Man in San Francisco.
And I think my vote would be for Queen and Slim.
Awesome.
And so the next category is Best Original Song. For the Oscars, it's I Can't Let You Throw Yourself Away for Toy Story 4. I'm Gonna Love Me Again, Rocket Man. I'm Standing With You, Breakthrough. Into the Unknown, Frozen 2, and Stand Up, Harriet. I think, so together we have only seen I'm Gonna Love Me Again for Rocket Man. Could not tell you which song that was.
Yeah, no, in fact, we have very few notes for the section, and my note is there was an original song in Rocket Man, because I thought the whole point was that we were going to hear, like, his whole like, it's kind of his discography, like, Mamma Mia. Yes.
I would like to briefly say Rocket Man was not a good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it's not... There are a lot of problems with Rocket Man, but in terms of did it look beautiful and was the soundtrack great?
Yes.
We could go on forever talking about every movie. But...
Story aspects, no, not there.
Yes, but we're not talking about that.
Yeah.
So talk about the Elsie.
The Elsies, so there is a nomination for Parasite, Rocket Man, Toy Story 4, and Frozen 2. And again, Parasite. I was not even aware that Parasite had an original song in it.
That's our only other note, is Rocket Man had an original song and Parasite had an original song. So, if it's okay with you, I think we should just abstain.
I'm not going to vote.
We clearly do not, this is not our category.
I would feel so terrible.
We should be disqualified from voting in this section. So the next section that Elsie had, there's not an Oscar equivalent, and it's nominees for Best Young Performers. And I think what's really cool about this list is you really get to see Elsie Fisher's lens. She, as an 8th grader, played an 8th grader. And so it makes a lot of sense to me that she would have a sensitivity to young performers. And it also really made me think, we can all complain about there are so many movies and TV shows we've seen where they have like child quote unquote actors who just are not good, who just can't do it, who are clear, like, you know, who clearly were chosen for, you know, like for some level of ease or to make someone happy. And so when you really get to see a child actor do incredible work, like I know one of the first like Sixth Sense and the original, sorry, not the original, but like the prequel Star Wars movie came out in a similar point in my life. And if you compared like the two young actors to each other, it's night and day. And so actually getting to see an incredible young actor is such a treat, and it is possible, but also very rarely are the roles that they're given, or at least the weight that we give their performances, put in the same category as adult actors. Like child actors winning Best Actor or Supporting Actor is really rare. So I thought that this was a great idea. And her nominations are Roman Griffin Davis from Jojo Rabbit, Julia Butters from Once Upon a Time in Hollywood,
Shahadi Wright Joseph, who is the daughter of In Us,
and Noah Jupe from Honey Boy.
For me here, my favorite was Julia Butters. In an otherwise terrible movie, just excellent in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I thought that every scene that she had with Leonardo DiCaprio was excellent. Just that the stretch of scene of him being on that TV show, everything was great. The first conversation between the two, where he is essentially looking at himself in time, and kind of explaining to Julia Butters' character that she will be him at some point. to him flubbing the lines in that scene, to her saying that's the best acting I've ever done. Just excellent, 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 excellent. I loved it, every part of it.
We keep teasing, but we will eventually talk about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I knew you were going to love talking about her because we've literally talked about how that scene is the best scene in the movie. But I just want to quickly talk. So we didn't see Honey Boy. I've only heard amazing things. But in terms of Jojo Rabbit, like, that movie is all about looking at World War II and the Holocaust and Nazi propaganda from a child's perspective. And if we didn't have a strong lead, someone who is able to bring wonder and fantasy and heartbreak and confusion into this really special, like, very big part, I don't think this movie, it wouldn't have garnered the praise, and it would have been as fantastic as it was. And also looking at The Daughter and Us, I'm really glad that Elsie brought her to our attention, because we'll talk about Lupita later, but The Daughter actually also did, like, she is a completely realized, like, obnoxious tween girl character, and she's also horrifying. Like, those are two completely different parts, and she plays them both pitch perfectly. So I really appreciate that Elsie took put my focus on this aspect of movies this year. And so your vote is for Julia Butters.
Yep.
I am gonna say my vote. I'm gonna say my vote is for Shahadi Wright Joseph.
All right. And the next category is Best Cinematography. So for the Oscars, we have The Irishman, Joker, The Lighthouse, 1917, and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'm not angry at 1917, and that's the only one I'm not angry at.
Really? I mean, we didn't see The Lighthouse.
Yeah, we didn't see... And I take it back, because The Lighthouse is not being added just because I haven't seen it. I really did want to see it. It is the follow-up for the director of The Witch.
The Witch!
And so I very much 100% behind that movie. I just did not see it, unfortunately. Yeah. Otherwise, The Irishman is 4 hours long. Who the hell is going to watch that movie?
But maybe it's 4 hours of incredible cinematography.
Supposedly.
Okay.
Supposedly. And then Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the cinematography was fine. I didn't think that was really a big portion of the movie, though.
No.
But... for the Elsies, we have The Lighthouse, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, Parasite, Waves, and Midsummer. Obviously, my favorite is Parasite. I thought that on watching it a second time and just noticing the open spaces for the rich family and the very crowded, junky spaces for the poor family. And even when the poor family has taken over the rich family's house while they're gone, they pile as much stuff onto the table as possible, and the way that they're framed is just cramped into this area, and so it was very beautiful to watch how the cinematographer, the director of photography, just kind of filled up these spaces as the poor family kind of came into them. Additionally, there are many scenes in which all of the poor family, all of the Kims are in the frame together, whereas you don't very often see the rich family in frames together. What I really liked is, they found when the rich family comes back and the Kims have to hide, in this entire open space of the house, they find the smallest cramped space to put the Kims in, which is under that table. Beautiful, just gorgeous, wonderful cinematography.
Yeah, Parasite will also get my vote for all of the reasons that Endo's just mentioned, but I just do want to say that I appreciate the list that Elsie put together. The Last Black Man in San Francisco is just like this visually rich story. Waves was just gorgeous and breathtaking and sort of like a dizzying haze of a movie, which worked so well for the story that they were trying to tell. And I've already talked about how I thought that the way that Midsummer was shot was very special to the movie, and so I appreciate the whole list. So the next category is nominees for best screenplay, and I'm not going to have us read out the Oscar contenders for this because Elsie didn't do original versus adapted, and so her nominees are Knives Out, Jojo Rabbit, Us, and Parasite. And I will say I kind of wish that she had done adapted because I think the best part for me for Little Women this year was the adaptation and taking the story that had these new and innovative ideas that didn't quite, for an author trying to publish in this time where there just wasn't a framework for her to be able to talk about, women's liberation and having a character not fall in love and, probably potentially even looking down on women who married for money, even though that was the best and most logical economic choice for them to make. I thought it was beautiful that we got to see a movie about women in history that used a 2019 lens to really do them all justice. So I don't need to add Little Women to this, but I just thought that it was the best adaptation this year. That said, I think Jojo Rabbit was just a really unique way to look at popularism of nationalism and genocidal ideas, and I think that that's a really valuable story to be told nowadays. I thought Us was smart and funny and fascinating. I think that Parasite is the best movie that got made this year, and of course that wouldn't work without a brilliant and perfect screenplay, but for me, it's Knives Out.
Oh yeah,
Knives Out is the winner.
Easily.
I just think everything about it was just perfect and just whip smart and it was like watching a cascade of dominoes fall. Everything had to fit into it perfectly. It was so smart. It was so fast. And it took this genre that we all know and love. It took a mystery, sort of a thrilling mystery, and had it be a mystery that's actually about America. And I just had a blast watching it.
Yeah, I think like I said at the very top, I think that screenplay is really the best place for a genre film to get its shine, and Knives Out really the screenplay is the driving force of it. I think that it's really great that it had a wonderful ensemble cast that was very willing to commit to each of the characters, and the characters are silly, so 100% commitments is important. But just the screenplay, all the twists and turns, the things that LeBlanc says that come out of his mouth, explaining mysteries as donuts is just hilarious. I think it's fantastic. Best screenplay of the year. I would vote it over and over again. It was so wonderful. Loved it. And so the next category are nominees for Best Supporting Actor. So for the Oscars, we have Tom Hanks in A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood, Anthony Hopkins in The Two Popes, Al Pacino in The Irishman, Joe Pesci in The Irishman, and Brad Pitt in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. What can you say? What can you say? I haven't seen The Irishman. I love Joe Pesci. Loved him in Home Alone. Loved him
One
in Home Alone
and
2.
two.
Just
One and two.
national treasure.
My cousin Vinny.
My cousin Vinny.
You know, this is why comedy awards should exist, people. Like
Yeah.
Joe Pesci has been giving us incredible performances for my entire life.
Yeah. However, the Elsie nominations are Brad Pitt, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Jonathan Majors, The Last Black Man in San Francisco, William Dafoe in The Lighthouse, and Sung Kang-ho, the father in the father Kim in Parasite.
Yeah, so I just want to address the elephant in the room, which is Brad Pitt survived onto Elsie's list. I don't understand how. I don't understand why. I don't understand. It's just like there's nothing about his performance, like his performance that like stood out to me as like, wow, that's acting, you know, or like, wow, he really went there. Like, I think he had fun. It's clear that they were all having, like, all the boys were having a great time on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I was not taken anywhere special with his performance.
Yeah, his acting was serviceable in the movie, but
I'm
the
not
movie
complaining.
didn't take us anywhere with his character that any acting was necessary for his role. So I'm not as big. I'm just not big on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I have been a big Tarantino fan. I have been a big Tarantino fan since I caught Pulp Fiction on HBO one night halfway through and watched it. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was not a good movie.
We're good there. We're good there. So what I would like to suggest is that we swap out Brad Pitt from this list and put in Jamie Foxx from Just Mercy.
Absolutely.
It was a beautiful film in general. You know, you were the one who said this as we were leaving, but we were both thinking it of like, not for Jamie Foxx's character, but for like it really. This movie really approached looking at the death penalty, as a horrible, as just a horrible thing, and approached it from that viewpoint, and then took it back to like the most extreme, where one of the greatest characters from that movie, and I'm going to forget his name, admitted like that he had done this horrible thing. But the movie really looked at him as a full person and like what would happen to a person that would cause them to do something so horrible. In his case, it was PTSD from serving in the Vietnam War. And so there are just a lot of really beautiful performances in that movie, and I think Jamie Foxx's was one that got just completely slept on.
Yeah. He was definitely snubbed for his performance. Yeah, I just thought that in a huge contrast to the role of Brad Pitt's character in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, a growth, a character who was very powerful from the very moment they stepped onto the scene and had to still grow throughout the movie. That is something that's going to be very difficult for anybody to portray, and for Jamie Foxx to not only portray that but also kind of live in that role. I found fantastic, and it's really unfortunate that he wasn't nominated for an Oscar this year.
Yeah, I mean that role involves a lot of subtlety. That role involves a lot of vulnerability. He takes us from the absolute lowest point to the absolute highest point that a person can experience, and he does it. It looks effortless. It's just beautiful. So, I would like for this list to be Jamie Foxx, Jonathan Majors, William Dafoe, and Song Kang-ho.
Also, shout outs to Song Kang-ho, who is a frequent collaborator with Bong Joon-ho, who made Parasite. I believe they also did The Host together, and I do believe he was in Snowpiercer as well. Excellent actor. Love his performance. And the scene in which he grabs the wife and you find out that he's joking. Acting on acting. Love that in my media. Really works for me. Love
true.
it.
And obviously, I want to shout out Jonathan Majors. I thought that he played this very tender character with these who just wants to be there for everyone in his life to the point that he will push them farther that they want to go, and it's painful to watch and it's beautiful to watch. Yeah, I love, now that we have fixed Elsie's list, I love this list of supporting actors. And honestly, yeah, we didn't see The Lighthouse, but I my vote could go anyway, and I would be happy. I think I'm going to stick with Jamie Foxx, though, because I just think that performance was so beautiful.
I'd agree.
Okay. So the next category is Best Supporting Actress. And the Oscars nominated Kathy Bates for Richard Jewell, Laura Dern for Marriage Story, Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit, Florence Pugh for Little Women, and Margot Robbie for Bombshell. And I think the only thing I'm really going to say about this particular list is this past weekend when we were hanging out with my family and family friends, and these are all like upper middle class white people, they got so angry about Kathy Bates, and like to the extent that one person was yelling, "That was a fake movie! That wasn't even a real movie!" And, like, Kathy Bates is wonderful, and she's a national treasure. We should all adore her. But yeah, it's definitely fascinating, all the incredible performances that were just completely bulldozed so that, Scarlett Johansson could get 2 nominations this year.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Elsie list, which is far superior, is Park So-dam, who was the sister in Parasite, Thomasin McKenzie, who was the Jewish girl in Jojo Rabbit, Laura Dern from Little Women, Taylor Russell from Waves, she played the sister, and
Zhao Shuzhen, who I believe was the grandmother in The Farewell.
And so this list is incredible. Yeah, this has everything that I would want.
I think the only thing missing on this list is Jennifer Lopez from Hustlers.
You were so right. How did I leave out J-Lo? I wrote J-Lo down. I didn't say it.
I know. J-Lo was excellent in Hustlers. Just, I think, again, very similar to the character that Jamie Foxx played. Somebody who has to be immediately charismatic and then has to also grow on screen throughout the movie. I think that she really nailed her part. I think that she was an integral part of Hustlers, and her chemistry with Constance Wu was excellent. I thought that she did great.
No, totally incredible, completely charismatic. Another character that, while we get to see the glitz and the glam that all these girls are able to put on, you also see this woman is fierce, and she loves her family, and she curates a family around her that she is going to protect like a lioness. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, I'm going to just say it. J-Lo. J-Lo is my vote.
Yeah. I would also just shout outs to Park So-dam. I thought her portrayal of the Kim sister was fabulous. I liked the little rhyming scheme that they had to remember who Jessica was at the beginning.
We're both doing the finger motions for it.
Just she was excellent. I hope that more of her movies come across the ocean so that we can see them. I just love foreign films, especially ones from Korea, from Japan. I've been a big fan since high school. So seeing Bong Joon-ho kind of come on the scene, and everybody kind of willing to get over what he calls the 1-inch barrier of subtitles on the screen. Just always happy to see these movies get more light, and always happy to see foreign-born actors and get some spotlight as well. Yeah. But I would also put down my vote for J-Lo and Hustlers. I will say that I did like Scarlett Johansson in Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah.
Didn't see Marriage Story, but I don't hate that she was included on supporting actress.
We'll get to that.
So the next category is Best Director. Lorraine Scafaria for Hustlers. Or, I'm sorry, looking at the Oscars first. Martin Scorsese, The Irishman, Todd Phillips, Joker, Sam Mendes, 1917, Quentin Tarantino, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Bong Joon-ho, Parasite. I'm glad that we're finally in the director's portion.
Yeah, because this is where we're really gonna complain.
Oh yeah. First off, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, terrible movie.
It was so bad. It was so bad.
There are moments that are great in that movie. Previously, we've said Leonardo DiCaprio's character guest starring on that Western was excellent. And another scene in that movie when Margot Robbie's Sharon Tate character goes to watch other people watch her on screen in the movie. I thought that was really good. However, those are only 2 scenes in a nearly 3-hour movie.
3 hours.
And it's bad. Bad.
No, one of the things we learned in theater school was if you're talking about what a movie's about, it shouldn't be a plot synopsis. It should be like its greater theme. So I think, Parasite is a really good easy example. It's about upper classes and lower classes, and how if you are in an underclass, there is no way, no matter how well you play it, no matter how smart, no matter how resilient, you cannot move up. Those aren't the plot points, that's the theme. And what is the theme of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood? Hollywood, I guess. It's about old Hollywood and new Hollywood. And look, one other thing that I liked about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, besides the 2 scenes that you mentioned, is I was more than happy to have I like how Quentin Tarantino likes to do revisionist history, and I do. Yeah. I was happy to have Sharon Tate live, but because we had just had 3, she barely talks in the movie. You don't really get to know her. It's mostly 2 hours and 45 minutes of Brad Pitt and Leonardo DiCaprio just feeling sorry for themselves.
Sad cowboys.
And then, so you don't even get the full emotional release of Margot Robbie does, Sharon Tate doesn't have to die. So a reverse, The Last Jedi edit is I think that if you were to make Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, have it all be about Sharon Tate, but have that one scene with Leonardo DiCaprio and Julia Butters in it, and then have the last scene with all the violence, it would be a perfect movie. Near perfect. I fixed it for you, Quentin.
I would also like to say that while Joker was good, I don't think that it is Oscar worthy in any capacity. If you've seen The King of Comedy or if you've seen Taxi Driver, you've seen The Joker. And for a superhero film, it's good. But as far as a movie goes, it's okay. It's good, but not really Oscar worthy. So it pains me to see all of the movies that have been chosen for Best Director, other than Parasite, and The Irishman. Again, haven't seen it. Might just be the best movie in the world. It's 4 hours long. I'm not gonna watch a 4-hour movie. At least in one go. So it has to be planned around.
Yeah, I think, again, with the notable exception of Parasite, you look at this list, it's mostly older white men, and it's hard, and it's a bummer, and they're making movies that are about and for white men.
Yeah. And so Elsie's nominations for Best Director are Lorraine Scafaria for Hustlers, Bong Joon-ho, Parasite, Alma Harrell, Honey Boy, Lulu Wang, The Farewell, and Jordan Peele, Us. So obviously my vote is for Bong Joon-ho for Parasite, but I do want to give special mention to Lulu Wang, who made the movie I cried the most during, and it was Farewell was beautiful. It was a great movie, but also it came out just before I was going to say goodbye to my grandmother forever. And so it hit me in a very emotional place this year, and I'm very happy to have seen it, and I'm very happy for it to have become as big as it did. So, shout outs to Lulu Wang, shout outs to everybody who was nominated for an Elsie. Loved these films this year.
Yeah, I will say that I felt like there were two notable exceptions from the Elsa's list, and that was Greta Gerwig for Little Women, and
Taika
Waititi for Jojo Rabbit. I thought both those movies were really special, and I think both those directors are deserving of their Oscar noms already. I want to agree with the farewell. I think one of the things that we're trying to address with taking the Elsies as seriously as we are is that women's stories are important.
Mm-hmm.
And having a story about a young woman and her love for her grandmother and trying to hold the sorrow of losing her grandmother so that her grandmother doesn't have to experience it is just so beautiful and so universal and so human, and also so very feminine. And yeah, and I just loved it and thought it was very special, and I really hope we get more from Lulu Wang. But yeah, I agree with you. I think that Parasite, it's Bong Joon-ho all the way. This?
Yep.
Okay.
Right there.
So the nominees for Best Actor are Antonio Banderas, Leonardo DiCaprio, Adam Driver, Joaquin Phoenix, and Jonathan Pryce. And what I will say is I agree with the point that you made earlier about The Joker isn't like the best movie, but I thought Joaquin Phoenix gave an incredible performance.
Yes, and I'm not sad to see him here on Best Actor.
That is the category that should be nominated.
Do not hate that at all.
Not sad about it at all.
Also, I'm super weirded out. The Jonathan Pryce nomination is for the movie The Two Popes. Never haven't seen it. No interest in seeing it. I just don't understand why we're just giving awards away here. Just, like who cares? Who cares who's nommed as long as he's white? That's the big thing.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to the Elsies then, I guess.
Yes.
So Taron Egerton.
Sure. Elton
John from Rocketman. Adam Sandler from Uncut Gems. John Driver. And Elsie didn't clarify this, but it goddamn better be for Marriage Story and not Star Wars. That's a whole nother can of worms. We're not opening it. Robert De Niro for The Irishman and Robert Pattinson for Lighthouse.
So I think that we only saw two of these, Rocketman and Uncut Gems.
But that's because we saw movies with much better male performances in them.
Absolutely.
And I wrote these all down, so I'm taking all of them.
Yes.
So for me, I know we've already talked about Just Mercy, but I thought that Michael B. Jordan gave an incredible, just like awestruck performance in Just Mercy.
And I think that it's due time for him to get an Oscar nomination, because if we lived in a just world, he would have gotten a Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor in Black Panther. He was excellent. He made me cry. So I really truly think that he should have been.
And Best Actor for Creed.
Yes. Oh yeah. Creed is my favorite Ryan Coogler joint. Underrated. So I do understand that a lot of people did end up seeing Creed because they made a second movie, but not enough film people saw Creed. And I feel that very strongly. Creed should be higher rated than it is. Give my boy Michael B. Jordan a damn Oscar already.
For real. Another one we wanted to mention was Eddie Murphy from I Am Dolomite.
Yes, My Name is Dolomite.
My Name is Dolomite. I'm sorry, Eddie.
He also should have gotten a Best Supporting Actor award for his role in Dreamgirls. Just throwing that out there. He
We're still better.
He happened to also release Norbit that same year, so maybe people look down on him for that. But also give my boy Eddie Murph, a Oscar already, please.
Yeah. And the last one I want to talk about, I know I've brought up Queen and Slim a few times, and I don't think it's a perfect movie. I'm not going to say that it should get Best Picture, but I thought that, things we've already mentioned, I thought were really incredible. And also, Daniel Kaluuya gave an incredible performance.
I have yet to see that man phone it in. He is just excellent every time he comes on screen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're sitting on the edge of your seat, watching this man who's just trying to get through this tense situation as a nice guy, and just seeing a police officer just reject everything that he has to say and to reject his humanity at such a base level. It was painful and incredible to watch.
Yeah.
So those should all be on the Elsies.
And lastly, I would also like to note that my boy Adam Sandler got robbed. Uncut Gems was excellent. He played his character just so fantastically. I'm so sad that he was not nominated. Justice for Adam Sandler.
Or Adam Sansan, as you would call him. Okay, but we didn't actually vote. I didn't actually have it figured out until I just thought about it now. But for me, it really is Daniel Kaluuya for Queen and Slim.
Yeah. I would probably vote for Eddie Murphy for My Name is Dolomite this year. And then our next category is Best Actress. So for the Oscars, we have Cynthia Erivo for Harriet, Scarlett Johansson, Marriage Story, Saoirse Ronan.
I can do
Little
this
Women.
one. I can actually do it. Saoirse Ronan. Saoirse like inertia. That's the only reason I can do it.
From Little Women, Charlize Theron, Bombshell, and Renee Zellweger, Judy.
Yeah. Fuck this list. Yeah. I'm so sorry, but fuck this list.
Yeah, the nominees for Best Actress for the Elsies are Lupita Nyong'o,
yes.
Us, Awkwafina, The
yes.
Farewell, Florence Pugh for Midsummer,
yes.
Ana de Armas, Knives Out, and Constance Wu, Hustler. All of these performances were excellent. I am so happy that Awkwafina won the Golden Globes this year. I think that as a fan of her career since she put out NYC and her other very hilarious songs, I think that I've just been a fan to see her not only kind of come into her own as a comedian, but also as a dramatic actress. I thought that was just fantastic. So I'm very happy to see Awkwafina's career flourish.
Yeah. A weird thing that I do is when I discover people either in smaller roles or indie roles and I really like them, I will follow them and root for them. And so I discovered Awkwafina through different comedy that she did, and she did her own, you can watch it on YouTube, show called Talk, written like awk, like awkward. And yeah, so I discovered her kind of right before her career just skyrocketed. So I agree with you. It's just been great. I loved her in Ocean's 8. I was there. Crazy Rich Asians. It was everything I wanted. But I didn't know what to expect with The Farewell because that seemed like a big leap to me. But she did it. She fully and completely did it. And yeah, it was a beautiful and heartbreaking performance. I want to spend a little time talking about Lupita Nyong'o.
Absolutely.
I'm going to bring up so I have thought that she was a good actress for a minute. I thought, she kind of busted on the scene with this really real sad role, and I thought that she did great in it. I thought she did great in Black Panther, but Enzo did not necessarily think she was a good actress before Us.
Yes, so I thought that at least in 12 Years a Slave, I wasn't that interested in the movie itself. I also thought that her character was mostly just screaming. So I
Screaming
didn't.
and crying.
Yeah, screaming
In fact,
and
that's
crying.
what you said. All we've ever seen her
Yes.
do is scream and cry.
Yeah. So I didn't find I didn't find 12 Years a Slave to be a very good representation of her acting talent. And then I saw Us, and I was like, oh,
And I was like, okay, can you finally acknowledge she can act now?
absolutely.
Yes. Yes.
She truly embodied those characters. I was floored by what she did. Again, horror movies just have truly good acting in them. They have truly good direction. They have great cinematography. They have great screenplays. They genre movies should just get more recognition than they do, and I think that Lupita Nyong'o really is excellent in Us. She any movie in which an actor can embody two different roles within it and be on screen together at the same time with those two roles, I think is fascinating. And I just thought she truly lived in both of those roles. She was great.
Yeah, I mean, the way that even she holds her body in the two different, like, yeah, her vocal tones, like, everything was just so and completely different. Yeah, I thought, yeah, she deserves the win.
Yeah, I would nominate her for Oscars, and I would definitely vote for her for the Elsies.
Me too.
And I think we're down to our last picture.
Best Picture! Okay, so the list is, for the Oscars, is Ford versus Ferrari.
Oh, great. We built a car.
They did. It was real fast. The Irishman, Jojo Rabbit,
Yeah.
Joker, Little Women, Marriage Story, which I hear is good, 1917, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Parasite.
I truly don't understand how Ford v Ferrari got here. Again, it's just a car movie. It's car talk, except a movie.
It's just guys being with guys, doing things that guys love. And I stole that from the Be Kind Rewind video about Oscar nominations this year that you should all watch. Yeah, I mean it's there's some Jojo Rabbit, Little Women, Parasite, are all incredible. I've heard I hope to watch Marriage Story soon. I've heard it's really good.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, especially looking at this year when there were so many amazing and beautiful women's stories, and especially women of color stories that were more meaningful and more powerful, and I think have had a much bigger cultural impact and have been much bigger conversations that we're having. It's insane to me that we have this list of 7 possible movies, only 3 of which diverge from what white men's stories have been in Hollywood.
And I think that one thing to think about is what we mean when we say Best Picture. And oftentimes with the Oscars, what Best Picture means is that it's the best picture that flattered us as an industry the most. And so you get a lot of movies about film. You get a lot of movies such as Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. You get a lot of movies about old white dudes, The Irishman. But I think another way that we can look at it is what was the best representation of this time period that we were in. And the Elsies, I think, really get at that. The Farewell, Parasite, Honey Boy, and Jojo Rabbit. So The Farewell is a immigrant story that kind of discusses the alienation of assimilation, the alien feeling of being in a place others, like your family, think of as home, but is completely foreign to you. We have Parasite, which is this captivating story about essentially class war. And fighting for the scraps at the bottom while rich people kind of take what they want from us as parasites, essentially. You have Honey Boy, which we have admitted that we haven't seen, but is about a relationship between a young boy and his father, touching on those issues. And then Jojo Rabbit, a story about resistance, a story about overcoming prejudices to build something between each other, and then fighting for what you believe in, and kind of coming to terms with what life is like after both war, after tragedy, and after life changes. I think that all of these movies are fantastic representations of our past year. My vote would obviously go for Parasite, but really any of these movies would represent 2019 perfectly.
Yeah, just to add on, with Jojo Rabbit, I also think that movie is really important because it's about a young white boy who gets completely indoctrinated in these falsehoods and these bad ideas and in Nazi propaganda, and like sort of the cognitive dissonance he has to have, and these complete buy into falsehoods to be able to hold on to his worldview. I think that that's a really important story to be told, and I think that's something that's really important for us to think about, and think about those young people who hopefully we can bring back. Also, yeah, I agree with everything you had to say about the farewell. I also, both of us have been dealing with mortality of family members that are very close to us this year, and I think being able to tell such a human story is incredible. As well as obviously everything you said about the immigrant experience and feeling alien in multiple spaces and places. And and Parasite, very much about class struggle, about how working class people are just held down by their necks. And one of the things that we were watching this video about Parasite and how the ending is just a perfect sort of double cap, or the kill shot for that entire movie. And they talked about this. So what was hardest for me in the movie, and when I stopped, it stopped being as fun for me, because people scheming to get more from rich people is fun and funny, and I don't know why anyone wouldn't enjoy it. But what was hard for me is when they started screwing over other workers, and it stopped being fun for me, and I was like, oh no, I don't like this, I don't want this to be happening. But that's the point, right? And that's the whole, even though these groups of people and these families should be uniting with each other to get more and to get what they deserve, they're fighting with each other, and they're fighting against each other, and they will be each other's downfall, as opposed to taking down the real parasites, which are the upper class.
Yeah.
Ooh, maybe we can start calling them the parasite class. Yeah.
But those are our votes and thoughts on the Elsies. If you have any thoughts or anything that we missed or anything that you think should get a shout out, let us know. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your time.
Yeah.